Today we have some very early signs of an upcoming Russian withdrawal from the south. And maybe because of this, the Kremlin mentioned that they can end the war even tomorrow, but there is one condition. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's go straight to the point and see some most recent footage. And our first picture comes to us from Zhytomyr, a region where the security services of Ukraine did another search in a Ukrainian monastery. We also have this picture where the face of a cat, along with other people, is also pixelated. And I'm not exactly sure what this cat did to deserve to be a criminal. Probably steal some kolbasa. And speaking about the security services of Ukraine, besides monasteries, they also did a search in one of the factories in Vinnytsia. Reportedly, this factory was selling the parts for Russian military vehicles. And as a result of the search, these suspicions have been confirmed. Next we have this teaser of an upcoming interview/documentary by David Letterman with the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky. This interview is scheduled to go live on Netflix on December 12th, and they'll be obviously talking about the Russian-Ukrainian war, as well as the poor condition of Ukraine's energy infrastructure. And speaking about the energy crisis in Ukraine, right here you can see the condition of, for example, just one of these energy infrastructures. According to the head of Ukrenergo, Vladimir Kudrytsky, this attack of Russians against the Ukrainian energy infrastructure, which amounted to be more than 1,000 missiles and drones, is the biggest attack of its kind in the history of humanity. But besides electricity, Russians also have been targeting another energy sources, such as Ukrainian gas. And just to give you an idea, according to the head of Naftogaz, Alexei Chernyshev, Russians attacked approximately 350 Ukrainian objects which are producing gas. Without a doubt, he says that this is going to be one of the toughest winters for Ukrainians, since there'll be very big limitations on electricity and heat. But among such bad news, we do have something positive. Because reportedly, as soon as a real winter begins and the ground freezes, this will allow Ukrainians to produce their counteroffensive much more efficiently. Because previously, due to a rain season in Ukraine, neither of the sides, especially Ukraine, was able to advance much because pretty much all the roads were full of mud. And ultimately, we do have an explanation by Putin himself why Russia is attacking the energy infrastructure of Ukraine. And according to him, this is the revenge for the Crimean Bridge, as well as the humiliation of the people of Donbass for the last 8 years. But I mean, leaving millions of Ukrainians without water, heat or electricity when the winter is coming is definitely the appropriate response from the country, which wants the rest of the world to see them as a good people. Oh, and yeah, almost forgot. Another reason why Russia is shelling the energy infrastructure of Ukraine is to force Zelensky to negotiate. And I mean, like, imagine you are fighting with another person, and as you hit him, you say, "Come on, bro, just stop fighting, just stop resisting, let's talk." And pretty much, yeah, as soon as the real winter starts, there is a very big possibility that we will see some major events happening in Ukraine. And if you don't want to miss any of these updates as soon as they start coming, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. You can also follow me on Instagram, because today I'll play some hockey and I'll try to post some stories. Alright, and before I show you some important updates from the east, let's really quick see some more footage and talk about the counteroffensive of Ukraine on the territory of Russia. And first of all, as you can see from this video, there has been an attack against Russian power lines located in Yakovlevo-Belgorod region. And as you can see, this settlement is located relatively far from the front lines. That is why it allows us to assume that Ukrainians started targeting even deeper inside the territory of Russia. And then right here we have the different satellite images from Digilevo airport located in Rязань region, and as you can see right here, several Russian bombers disappeared after the incident. If you remember from my previous episode, it looks like that Ukraine decided to go full offensive mode and started targeting the military infrastructure of Russians on their own territory. And during the last several days, such objects were affected in Bryansk, Kursk, Rязань and Saratov regions. And as you can see, some of them are located hundreds of kilometers away from the border with Ukraine. And even though there is still no official confirmation by the Ukrainian government that these were Ukrainians behind these attacks, according to this article, these drones were most likely created as a collaboration between public and private sectors in Ukraine. And one of the main reasons for this assumption it is because these drones, which were used to attack the Russian airfields, do not look like modified models from Ukroboronprom, which is one of the main companies in Ukraine producing the military equipment. In addition to that, there are some rumors that Ukrainians are trying to develop a new drone with a range of approximately 1,000 kilometers. And if they are successful, this will allow them to target even more distant military targets of Russians. This week alone I received several hundreds photos and videos, but more than 90% of this footage I'm not able to show on YouTube. For this reason I uploaded some of it to my Discord and the rest will be available on my Patreon. And if you want to see these unacceptable photos and videos, the links will be down below. Alright, and before we talk about one very interesting news, which I'm keeping as a surprise for now, let's briefly talk about the updates from the East. And first of all, according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians are most likely increasing the intensity of their attacks in the eastern Kharkov region as well as western Luhansk. And at the same time, the main directions of Russian attacks remain the same, next to Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Donetsk city. In addition to that, and looks like it is something new, Russians are reportedly trying to transform Mariupol into their next biggest transportational hub. Is that this city will become the main stop for Russians before they start distributing their supplies both to the east and to the south. In addition to that, Russians will most likely use Mariupol to bring their ships from Rostov-on-Don. And as you can see, in case this is true, this only confirms the fact that Ukrainians need to retake Mariupol as soon as possible. And spoiler alert, they are doing just that in this area, but we'll talk about this in more details very soon. According to some other reports, Russians are preparing their next wave of offensive against Kupiansk and Liman. And at the same time, just like yesterday, they are sending reinforcements to Svatovo-Kreminna road just to basically hold it. As always, Russians also try to advance next to Yakovlevka, Solidar, Bakhmut, Klishchinivka and Opotne, but reportedly Ukrainians were able to repel most of these attacks. And there are also some yet unconfirmed reports that Russians in Bakhmut area alone use as much as 2,000 rounds of ammunition per person per day. But the most important thing of all this is that Bakhmut still holds. And ultimately, on this map, let's see the changes in territorial control over the last 24 hours. Due to a massive pressure and many soldiers being eliminated, Russians were able to advance a little bit closer to Bakhmut. And as we move a little bit more to the north, we can see that Russians were able to capture more land closer to Bilohirivka. Alright, and before we talk about the crucial update from the south, here is as promised is your surprise news. And I mean, probably some of you have already heard about it, but today the American basketball player Brittney Griner was exchanged for a Russian citizen, Viktor But. But here is the catch. The allegations against Brittney Griner is that she brought into Russia a prohibited oil. And in the meantime, Viktor But was sent to 25 years in American jail for selling illegal weapons to terrorists. And I mean, yeah, both of them are people, it is just that the magnitude of their wrongdoing is a little bit different. Both the basketball player and the weapon baron were pardoned, and the exchange happened in the United Arab Emirates. And reportedly, according to Bloomberg, the initial exchange was supposed to be Victor Bout, an American spy, Paul Whelan. But Russia did not want to give up such a valuable prisoner. That is why they mentioned to the Biden administration that it is either Brittany Griner or nothing. And then right here we can see the exact moment of the exchange of Russian weapon baron for American basketball player. The reaction of the majority of regular Russian people was pretty much confused. But the main Russian propagandists, such as Margarita Simonyan and Maria Zakharova, were cherishing the return of Victor Bout as a national hero. They say that the people of Russia celebrate this moment because their fellow countrymen returned from American captivity. And to be honest, I have not met any single person who was celebrating it. But then, believe it or not, it gets even more ridiculous. Because according to the member of the Russian Duma, Leonid Slutsky, Victor Bout will be invited to the Russian parliament to participate in the next so-called conference about international affairs. But okay. And now as promised, let's talk about the South. The artillery duels between Russians and Ukrainians on both sides of Dnipro River continued this night as well. And the main targets of Ukrainians were located in Novokakhovka and Hola Pristan, while Russians were mainly focusing on Kherson city. At the same time, Russians continued to build defenses along main logistical roads, and however they call it, to perform the reorientation of their forces to different regions. And I mean, yeah, the retreat, the withdrawal, the reorientation, you can call it however you want, the idea still remains the same. At the same time, Ukrainian side reported some minor explosions in Odessa, but then Russians reported even louder noises in Simferopol. And according to the governor of Sevastopol, the Russian infiltrator Mikhail Razvazhayev, this was the result of Russian air defense system intercepting Ukrainian drone. Next we go more to the east to another temporarily occupied territory, to Berdyansk, where according to the mayor of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov, 3 very loud and 15 not so loud explosions were heard in the airbase. And reportedly, Russians did keep their military vehicles and drones in this airport. That is why in the nearest future I think we will see some very promising satellite images. And ultimately, even more explosions were reported in Tokmak. The first thing to mention is that previous day Russians were shelling Nikopol, and as you can see right here, it is located on another side of Dnipro River. For now, keep this in mind, because it will be very important very soon. And the second thing is that according to this article, Russians are preparing another provocation on the territory of Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. This article mentions that Russians brought several multiple rocket launcher systems called Grad onto the territory of the plant. And the reason they were able to do this, it is because of the shelling of Nikopol, which we talked about previously, which means that Russians were attacking the positions of Ukrainians on the other side of the river, and during this chaos they swiftly brought these military vehicles and placed them next to the Power Unit 6. And the main assumption here is that Russians will use these Grad systems to cover their even bigger retreat from Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Because if you remember, previously Russia already allegedly agreed to transfer the ownership over this plant to the International Atomic Energy Agency. But most likely they still have some war crimes, military documents that they need to take out from the territory of this plant and run with them. And so, potentially, as soon as they can do this, their next destination will be most likely to go to Melitopol. But since Ukrainians are trying to actively push both from Tokmak area and from the west of Kherson, as a result of all this, we might see this become even bigger withdrawal. And as a result of all this, in the best case scenario, in the near future we might see this area to be liberated. Russians obviously see, or at least assume this as well. That is why they are constantly trying to prepare their people for the potential defeat. And one of the most recent things they did is that Kremlin released a statement that Russia can end this war, even tomorrow. But there is one condition. This statement came to us from the press secretary of Russia, Dmitry Peskov, and according to him, this condition is the will of Zelensky. What he kinda implies is that Russia has no problem ending the war as soon as possible. It is Ukraine who wants to continue fighting. And the first important thing to take into consideration is that Russia itself started acknowledging that it is Ukraine who dictates the rules of war. And then almost immediately Peskov added that even though we want to end this war, we will not do it until we liberate our captured territories. So yes, you got it right. Russia wants to recapture previously occupied territories of Ukraine and take them back from Ukraine. And these two things is just a perfect example of the Russian-style contradiction. On the one hand, they say that yes, we want to end this war as soon as possible. It is Ukrainians who want to keep going. But on the other hand, they say that, well, kinda, yeah, we want this, but at the same time we do have some conditions and goals that we need to first meet. And so yeah, this creates this constant loop of the absence of accountability. You can say whatever you want and seem like a good person, but in the end you'll just continue doing exactly the same. But I mean, who knows, maybe in the near future there will be some steps towards negotiations. And once again, if you don't want to miss as soon as this starts happening, just please subscribe to my channel. It only takes one click. And if you want to support my work, please consider becoming my channel member, use a PayPal link, or become my Patreon, where you receive early access to the additional content. You can find all the other useful links to the right and down below. Thank you so much for your attention, товарищи, and see you tomorrow.